Hi, my name's Chris Lawrence Pietroni. I'm from the UK. I grew up in London and both my parents were doctors. They both worked in the inner city their whole careers. And my mum in particular didn't make much of a distinction between her life and her work, and many of her patients became close friends. And that was how I met Anne. And I remember going to visit Anne with my mum when I guess I would have been about 13. And she lived on a rundown post-war housing estate. And I remember as we walked up the steps to her flat that the stench of urine just turned my stomach. And sitting with my mum on the sofa having a cup of tea with this reek of damp coming out of the walls, and it just made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And I remember turning to my mum and saying, I just want to leave. And she said to me, just be grateful that you can. And it was that challenge of my mum's, I guess, that led me to choose an early career in anti-poverty work and then in public service, where I was always seeking to support communities, community development, citizen involvement. And, we had successes along the way, but they never seemed to last for very long, or they never seemed to be big enough. And in some ways it didn't really matter to me because I kept getting promoted and I did really well. I got to a really senior position, and one day I found myself being called into Minister's office in Westminster, being asked to advise on these issues to ministers. And as I came out, I saw all the tourists in Westminster looking at Big Ben and Westminster Abbey, and I remember thinking, yeah, I've really arrived. But I also remember at the back of my mind having this nagging doubt, which was, what difference is the work that you're doing really making? And eventually that nagging doubt was too big to be ignored, and I chose to leave my work, and I spent some time studying, and I had the opportunity to take Marshall Gantz's public narrative and organising classes, and in those I found skills and approaches and ways of thinking which just seemed to offer bits of the puzzle that were missing, and an opportunity to make change that could last and make change that could be big enough within and across the public services. So that's what I do now. I have the great good fortune to work in the UK with people who are like-minded and who want to find new ways of creating public services, of creating health and well-being that promote empowerment rather than dependency.